Based on what we know from the Trump campaign, he wants America to work for him and his friends at the expense of everyone else. Just a more extreme version of the failed theory of trickle-down economics with his own addition of outlandish Trumpian ideas that even Republicans reject.
Gosh, it's so rich hearing that from the woman who just enriched herself through the Clinton Foundation. What is Trumpian ideas? What is that? Hillary Clinton also said that Trump wants America to work for him at the expense of everyone else. Yeah, see, yeah. Again, Clinton Foundation. She used her position and her power to enrich the Clintons. I mean, you saw Chelsea Clinton's pad in New York, right? Here with us now is senior fellow at the Cato Institute, Dan Mitchell. Dan, did Hillary say anything at all, and this might be slightly rhetorical, that makes you optimistic?
Not really. The only thing that I actually liked in her speech was where she was lying. She said that she was against trade agreements, and we know deep down the one pro-market position she has is that she's in favor of expanded trade. But she lied about that. Everything else that she said was more government, more taxes, more spending, more regulation, more red tape. If I was a small business owner and I heard that speech, I would probably be cutting my wrist in the bathtub tonight.
It sounded like the Obama proposition for the first stimulus, but on steroids. I mean, it was her job plan involves investments, debt and taxes. That's pretty much all I heard. I mean, it just more. We need what? High-speed web, more infrastructure, more stimulus stuff, which didn't do anything when Barack Obama did it twice to increase jobs.
Yeah, we have to remember that when she says investment, that means she's taking money from the private sector and having the government spend it. And sure, I guess we can say that's an investment, but most of us don't like investments with negative returns. And that's exactly what we got with the so-called stimulus under Obama. It didn't work. I mean, for that matter, this is the old warmed-over idea of Keynesian economics. It didn't work for Hoover and Roosevelt in the 30s. It hasn't worked for Japan for the last 25 years. This notion that somehow there's a perpetual motion machine of government where you feed some quarters into the slot and it spits out dollar bills is the most preposterous thing I've ever heard. But politicians love the theory because it tells them that their vice, spending money, is a virtue.
Yeah, virtue signaling, spending everyone's money. She mentioned these left-behind communities. She was talking about, of course, being there where she was preaching to these left-behind community, talking about investment in infrastructure and these old manufacturing centers of the Midwest. But the thing, Dan, that gets me about this is she seems to be misunderstanding what led these so-called left-behind communities, what put them in this left-behind position in the first place. And it wasn't spending on infrastructure and stimulus stuff. I mean, there are a lot of variables that play into this, correct?
Well, there are two things that struck me when I was listening to that. First of all, if she really cared about economic rejuvenation of the Rust Belt, why isn't she embracing a lower corporate tax rate? Our corporate tax rate is higher than Greece, than Sweden, than France. So some of the most high-tax welfare states in the world have more competitive corporate tax systems than we do. So why doesn't she embrace that? Why can't she triangulate to the middle like her husband and at least be semi-reasonable on some positions? And the other thing that came to my mind is, especially when she talks about, like, say, Flint, Michigan, these are big government, Democrat, left-wing run cities that have spent themselves into a ditch, and shouldn't we, before actually asking taxpayers around the country to pony up more money, shouldn't we demand that these local communities maybe fix their own problems and get rid of all the union, feather-bedding government employees, lower the property taxes, streamline their operations? No, she just wants more subsidies of systems that have failed because of big government.
Yeah, and all of that money poured into these communities, there will be no return on that investment. It's just going to be pouring it down a black hole.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the whole point about so-called investments in government are like buying Enron 2 weeks after it went bankrupt or something like that. I mean, if we really thought, this is what went through my mind when I subjected myself to the torture of listening to her speech. This hasn't worked in Greece. This hasn't worked in Venezuela. Nowhere in the world where you keep making government bigger and bigger and bigger do you ever get good results. And I'm thinking I must be living in this parallel universe, because I would think that the people in the audience would be bursting out laughing, either that or running for the exits, holding on to their wallets and purses.
I think we're in that parallel universe with you there, Dan. Dan Mitchell, Senior Fellow, Cato Institute. Dan, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Dana.